Avengers Tower is so cool, but they're never around to use it. I think they're probably somewhere on the West Coast right now.
I've got toe-to-toe with the Avengers. You're nothing.
Welcome everyone to Marvel Hub. This is DK Dynamite, and today I want to talk about the fact that Spider-Man PS4 already perfectly fits within the same universe as Marvel's Avengers, the upcoming Avengers game that is expected to release on May 15th, 2020. Now, what I really wanted to talk about was the fact that a Spider-Man game that would have released over a year before this upcoming anticipated Avengers game could have already jump-started the apparent Marvel Games universe, which many people suggest would be a series of various Marvel games all taking place in the same world and all building towards one big event later down the line, very similar to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, there are plenty of Easter eggs that were laid out in Spider-Man PS4 which somehow perfectly connect to what we saw in the first reveal trailer for Marvel's Avengers. So in the first trailer, we obviously see the Avengers on the West Coast in San Fran celebrating the opening of their West Coast facility, while in Spider-Man PS4, when Peter looks at the Avengers Tower, he specifically says this: Avengers Tower is so cool, but they're never around to use it. I think they're somewhere in the West Coast right now. So that could have easily been an Easter egg laid out by developers because they knew that eventually when this Avengers game dropped, they would be on the West Coast, and they're laying out a pretty cool Easter egg that may suggest that A-Day, or the day when Avengers celebrate that West Coast opening, that may have happened on one of the same days as one of the core events that happened in Spider-Man PS4's main storyline. Maybe Peter heard about A-Day on the radio somewhere and knew that they would be somewhere on the West Coast during one of those days in the main campaign. Maybe that's the case, and if you're wondering why the Avengers are even moving towards the West Coast, just maybe they already feel like New York and most of the East Coast is protected by the hands of Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, the Defenders, and several other heroes, to the point where they believe the West Coast isn't guarded or protected in the same way, which justifies the opening of a new Avengers facility in San Francisco. So I think that's one real easy connection you can make between these two games, and maybe the developers of Spider-Man PS4 knew a majority of the plot for Marvel's upcoming Avengers game, so they're easily able to make a pretty simple correlation between these two stories. Now, the next thing is the fact that the Taskmaster can be seen in this Avengers trailer. And if you guys remember from Spider-Man PS4, the Taskmaster himself has said that he's gone toe-to-toe with the Avengers and Spider-Man is nothing to him. So just maybe the events of A-Day, or the beginning of this Avengers game, happens right before the events of Spider-Man PS4 when it comes to the Taskmaster, the Avengers opening up their West Coast facility. Maybe that all happens right before or almost during the main events of Spider-Man PS4. Then days later, the Taskmaster makes his way over into New York to face Spider-Man. Maybe that's what that's referring to, and could make perfect sense. And then after that 5-year gap in this big Avengers game, you may see a connection or a cameo or even Spider-Man as a playable character throughout this main story, which leads into the next topic about the marketing and DLC exclusivity for Marvel's Avengers game. So even though the game will be releasing on PS4, Xbox, PC, Google Stadia, even though it's going to be releasing on all those platforms, apparently PlayStation still has some exclusivity deal to where they'll have exclusive content on the PlayStation 4. And even though the rights to Spider-Man are different across games and movies, I still believe Sony has a really close connection to the character of Spider-Man for both films and even in the games. So they may have requested for Square Enix to put out exclusive Spider-Man content that may be in the same shared universe as Spider-Man PS4, specifically for the upcoming Avengers game. And the content will probably be Spider-Man as a playable character, or an exclusive Spider-Man mission taking place near the Avengers or with them entirely, something along those lines. And I think it makes the most sense that since Spider-Man PS4 was an exclusive PlayStation game, that if they were to feature him in Marvel's Avengers game, they would only make that new content specifically for PS4 instead of having that content cross over to Xbox, PC, and the Google platform when those platforms haven't experienced the Spider-Man PS4 game. game. They could even have a deal where maybe they port over Spider-Man PS4 to other platforms before the release of Avengers to kind of bring people up to speed with this new Marvel Games universe. That would also be a great idea and could also support the fact that Sony would not only want every other platform to enjoy Spider-Man's story, but would still want certain exclusive rights to the character and would have certain exclusive content just on PlayStation. So that's definitely a possibility, but honestly, it makes perfect sense to do so. You have elements of this new Avengers game taking place before, during, and after the storyline from Spider-Man PS4. It would make perfect sense and honestly doesn't feel like a coincidence. But let me know what you think of all this down below in the comment section. This has been DK Dynamite. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and turn notifications on to stay up to date with the latest and greatest Marvel news and information. And peace out, everyone.